Susan wants to know my thoughts on using MMS. Susan, there's a lot of medical acronyms. Why don't you spell out what you mean by MMS, and I can potentially give you an answer. Let's see here. What would be your protocol for someone with a perforated cornea? Well, that's an off-topic question. Somebody with a perforated cornea, one of the best things that you can do to help to make sure that your body has what it needs to heal and repair, especially with something of that nature, high doses of vitamin C would be one of the things that I would suggest, probably at the top of the list, coupled with a good solid quality multivitamin, something like Ultra Nutrients. If you're familiar at all with any of my formulations, I have 2 multivitamin formulations. One's called Ultra Nutrients. But Detox C, or high doses of vitamin C, 5 grams plus, combined with a really quality multivitamin. Also have a product called Foresight, which is actually, we may have changed the name. I think we changed the name to Ultravision, but it's got a number of different antioxidants for the eye to help and support the function of the eye as a whole, including carotenoids and beta-carotenoids and other compounds. So you might look at that as well. But as far as protocol, I mean, I don't like protocols to any great degree. Protocols are a one-size-fits-all approach. I like an individualized approach. So the bigger question I would encourage you to entertain is, what nutrients does your body lack in order to properly heal and repair itself? And for that answer, you can get with a good functional doc, and they can measure those things for you and give you a very, very specific protocol. Okay, let's see. Just saw the first thing show on Brighton Jewelry's homepage are fashion masks. Need I say I did my shopping elsewhere? Andrea, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, we're seeing the mask stuff everywhere, and you really have to, intelligently look at that and question why that advice is being given. I'm not going to belabor that anymore this evening, because I did a whole show on masks last week or a week and a half ago, and you can go back and watch that episode if you really want to dive into more on masks and the science behind masks and why they actually don't do much for you at all. Let's see. So Lauren says, my midwife office forced me to wear a mask today. I felt like I couldn't breathe and it triggered anxiety. What can I do? They said they can turn away those who don't wear one. Yeah, but legally they can't, especially if you tell them that you have a medical condition when you put the mask on that is exacerbated by the mask. And so legally they can't ask you why. They just have to accept that that's the case, and they can't decline or deny you service for it. So that's just kind of a trick. Those of you who are being forced to wear a mask where it causes disruption in your own health, that's all you have to say, and then you don't have to wear the mask. Now, there are some places where you may not wear the mask and you can say that and get away with it, but then other people in the store might berate you or attack you. So if you're kind of a timid person and you don't want to be eye boxed to death, so to speak, then you got to make that decision. I mean, personally, I'm in Texas. I'm in Houston, in the greater Houston area, where we've had quite a few cases, but not terminally. Based on the population size of where we live, the death rate is even lower than that, 0.1%. So I don't feel the need to wear a mask any more than I would for influenza season, or any more than I would for any other virus. I feel the need to work out and exercise and take care of myself. And breathe clean, fresh air that's not regurgitated carbon dioxide. So, we've had a lot of ugly looks, but that's okay. You gotta have tough skin for some of the people that are out there that are undereducated or don't understand, or just their action steps are in that fear mode. And again, some people are wearing their mask because they feel more comfortable that way. Maybe they're immunocompromised, and that's okay too. We don't have to judge people who wear masks because we're not comfortable wearing a mask. It doesn't have to be a fight. I think the fight is what people want. That's why the government's message has been conflicting. And again, at first it was, by all means, masks are worthless, don't wear them. And then, shortly after that, it was, oh, we need to wear masks. And there wasn't any really great new evidence. Some people say, well, there was new evidence. No, there wasn't. There was no really great new evidence that showed that wearing a mask could protect you from COVID-19. For that matter, or any other disease for that matter. I mean, we're not all working in a surgical trauma ward where we're trying to protect the patient from our own germs. But there are immunocompromised people that would rather wear a mask. I would simply say if masks work, then the person wearing it shouldn't have to worry about another person who's not wearing one. But anyway, my point is, be nice to your neighbor whether they're wearing a mask or whether they're not. We don't need to fight each other on the issue. Let's see here. Wow, some really off-topic questions, and I can welcome them because I know probably many of you are tired of talking about this topic. So I'll answer a few of these. Would taking a teaspoon of chlorella powder in the morning break a 16-hour fast? Yes, it would, because there's calories in that chlorella powder. So think of breaking a fast as when you implement the introduction of calories into your diet is officially breaking a fast. Let's see here. Some of the comments are funny, but I won't read them out loud. Best protocol to replenish my gut. I think I have leaky gut. I've filtered my shower and drinking. I'm taking collagen. From Wildmark, Alexandra. Look, again, I mentioned this earlier, that protocols, generic protocols, for leaky gut, one size fits all doesn't work. If you're looking for some strategies, some simple things that you can do, you can use supplement. If you're looking for certain supplements that might be effective at helping kind of support resealing of the barriers of the GI tract. Supplementally, L-glutamine, we have a product. We have another product called GI Soothe, and we have another one on Gluten-Free Society. For those of you who don't know, that's our foundation. But we have several different products there. GI Soothe, we have one called Immune Shield, we have Gluten Shield, and L-glutamine can all be an effective strategy. However, the best strategy is isolating and identifying what you should or shouldn't be eating, and that's best done through accurate testing. Because no matter what you take supplementally, if you're eating foods that rip microscopic holes in your GI tract, then the leaky gut will never be healed no matter how much supplementation you use. Is a vegan diet with supplements healthy? It depends on the person, Sam. Vegan diets can be healthy. They are for some, and this goes back down to testing. I generally, to help determine whether or not somebody's better fit for vegan or better fit for meat consumption in a bigger way, I generally will do certain types of tests to help me delineate that information so that we can make an accurate decision about their own unique diet and how it should be followed. But as a general rule of thumb, is a vegan diet with supplements healthy? It depends on the person is really the answer. Vegan diets for some people can tend to not be enough protein or can tend to not be enough certain nutrients, and for others can be just fine. Let's see here. Best supplements to, let's see. Best supplements to take to build your immune system against allergens, from Donna. If you want to support yourself during allergy season, there's two things that I highly recommend, and they're super effective in my experience. One of them is a product called Hist Assist. Again, you can find that on Gluten-Free Society. Another is a product called Ultra Sinus Support. Both supplements contain a variety. There are two different formulations of my design that contain a variety of different ingredients that support and help to stabilize your mast cells in your immune system so that you're not overproducing histamine and creating the allergenic response that so many people struggle with during allergy season. Okay. So some of you talking about cutting a breathing hole in your mask. I gotta laugh at that. That's great. I actually had a thought where I might put a paper bag over my head and just cut out a couple of eye holes like the old Charlie Brown cartoons. and see how far that would fly and how many crazy looks we could get and just get it on camera and just watch people's reactions. But anyway, again, I don't want to be an instigator. It's fun to talk about it because we can all vent together in a certain sense. But, you know, again, for the sake of not creating a war or a battle, so Chris wants to know, why is there such a dichotomy with functional and integrative docs on the COVID situation? That's a really good question, Chris. I can't answer or speak for other doctors. Look, I've got colleagues that are living in fear right now. They're in an isolated bubble in the corners of their house because they have a very real fear of what's going on. Justified or not, it is who they are. I can't speak for why that is the case, but I'm a numbers guy. I'm an analytical guy. I mean, some people told me I should have gone on to engineering because that's just the way my mind works. But numbers don't lie. I mean, you can manipulate numbers, and you can manipulate numbers to create a lie. But mortality rates as a whole don't lie. And again, what we're finding is I don't know why people are so scared about this virus. I got it the first month and a half when we didn't have known data points that we could really extrapolate from. But today, you know, we've got 4 months of data at this point, that really 5 months of data at this point, that show this virus is not only is it on the downswing, but the mortality rate just doesn't justify what happened. And why some other doctors don't see it that way, maybe they're just not reading the literature, maybe their fear is paralyzing their ability to think clearly. I don't know. It's a great question. Yeah, so let's see, keep scrolling here. Deborah wants to know what would be the normal levels for cholesterol, LDL, HDL, and triglycerides. It depends, Deborah. You know, in my experience, you know, going back, I've been practicing now for 20 years, and so when I started practice, normal cholesterol was 280. You know, and what we saw over the last 20 years was several entities come together. Many of them were funded by big pharma. So this was actually a major expose in the 90s where a reporter actually reported that it was a panel of 13 doctors. 9 of them were on the payroll for Merck and Pfizer. And so it was a very highly biased board of doctors that lowered the cholesterol from, I believe at the time it was 250 to 220. And the FDA granted these doctors waivers, even though they had a direct conflict of interest on being able to make that decision. It was obvious they had a direct conflict of interest, but the FDA granted them waivers. And if you know anything about the history of the FDA is kind of a revolving door for drug suits, meaning that people that run the drug companies go work for the FDA, and then when they're done working for the FDA, they go back and work for the drug companies. It's kind of a revolving relationship, a revolving door relationship. It's part of why in our country today there's so much corruption and so much, we'll say, pseudoscience around drugs, because a lot of studies, in my opinion, are published using manipulative data or using data that was bought and paid for by drug companies, and other data that showed drugs don't actually work was suppressed. We know that happens on a regular basis. Even the New England Journal of Medicine and the JAMA, both the editors of those 2 prestigious medical journals, came out a number of years ago saying that's the way it works, is drug companies pay for data. And they report the data that favors the sale of their drugs, and they suppress the data that does not. So again, we got off track there, but we were talking about cholesterol. And so today the numbers are, if your cholesterol is higher than 200, they call it high. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. I don't even believe that cholesterol plays much of a role in the causation of cardiovascular disease. I believe that's another one of those overblown things. And if you'd like to learn more about that, you can go back and watch. I've done some prior episodes on cholesterol that you can watch where I dive in a lot more deeply to the history. Let's see here. What are good, back it up one on the top there on the tube. What are good supplements for people with migraine headaches? Penny, first and foremost, I've got a great article on migraine headaches on Gluten Free Society that you should go check out, because there are a number of different triggers for migraine headaches. Now, supplementally speaking, there are different supplements that are considered migraine prophylactics, and magnesium is one of them. It's very beneficial and very helpful for many migraine sufferers. So magnesium Ultra MG if you're shopping on Gluten Free Society, but also vitamin B12 or methylcobalamin is considered a migraine prophylactic, as is vitamin B2, as is CoQ10. So, you know, if you're on Gluten Free Society, as you're reading that article, we have a product called CoQ Max, and then we have another one called B Complete that addresses some of the ingredients of the nutrients that we know are migraine prophylactic in nature. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, some people are chiming in on the cholesterol issue. What about Eskimos who have a cholesterol in the 500s but are healthy? Yeah, I mean, if you look at Inuit people, cholesterol is very high. Their fat content or saturated fat content of their diet is higher than anywhere in the world. Yet, unless they start eating processed packaged food, they don't have an incidence of heart disease or cancer, not any to speak of, or diabetes. They're actually very healthy people. Again, it wasn't until we put them on reservations and started giving them food stamps to buy packaged cereal boxes and sodas and other garbage and junk that is subsidized by taxpayer dollars. That's when they actually started showing up with disease. So it really wasn't the fat that killed them, it was the carbohydrates and the sugar that killed them, which is the case for many people with cardiovascular risk factors and disease. Yes, Estefania is talking about a great book called Bottle of Lies. It's a great book. I've read it. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a really good read on the pharmacy industry and how drugs are inspected, especially our generic drug brands that are produced in India and China, and how corrupt some of those companies are in India and in China, and how they produce products that are inferior and frankly dangerous to the American population. But the FDA turns a cheek and looks the other way and forces their FDA inspectors to pass these companies that wouldn't otherwise pass inspection. Catherine Eben, I think, is the author of that book. He's showing a correlation between the highest rates of COVID-19 and 5G. Where 5G is most present, the rates of infection are higher. What's my opinion? I think there's two problems here. I think, you know, some people think that the 5G and that those towers and it's all 5G, COVID is all 5G. I don't know that I can believe that, because you see people with COVID diagnoses in areas where 5G is not really present. That being the case, you know, one of the mechanisms behind 5G is similar to one of the mechanisms behind COVID, which is a disassociation of heme iron from hemoglobin, which can create the air hunger that many doctors have been reporting. So I think I think there could potentially be a correlation, but you know, it goes back to what we say, and that's this: everybody's entitled to more than one problem. I think a person could have both. I think a person could have one or the other. So that's my opinion. I would certainly say if you see 5G towers going up and your health has deteriorated since that's happened, it certainly would be something at the top of the list that I would encourage you to investigate a little bit more deeply. Let's see here, scrolling down a little bit more. Yeah, so just a lot of you are just commenting, like Dr. Fauci was taking a hard-nosed approach and now he's starting to back off a little bit. That's because Fauci's a politician. Fauci blows, I want to say this without putting anyone off. Fauci blows with whatever the direction the wind blows. Unfortunately, he's in charge and gets to make the decisions, even though, you know, he's flip-flopped. He flip-flopped on masks. He flip-flopped on whether or not we needed to close. He flip-flopped on whether or not this thing was to stop the spread or to flatten the curve. He's flip-flopped so many times. He falls with the direction of the winds of change. And so I think we're going to see that's what politicians do. Remember, although he is a doctor, he hasn't practiced. You know, he's been a politician for 45 years. So why we're letting a politician lead us through this as an expert in epidemiology is beyond me. I think having him in charge of this whole thing was a mistake from the get-go. But that's my personal opinion. Let's see. Keep going down on that Facebook feed. Okay, so let's stop there. So Laura wants to know what off topic, but what should my homocysteine number be optimally? What is the best way to get my number to go down? I have problems taking B vitamins and folate. If you're looking at kind of an optimal level of homocysteine, ideally, somewhere around 9 or less. So you want it to be under 9 if you're laboratory testing for homocysteine. I mean, there's really only a handful of ways we know to lower homocysteine, and that's using predominantly B vitamins like vitamin B12, folate, vitamin B2, vitamin B6 are all known to help with that pathway. Some people have genetic mutations that make it a little bit harder for them to properly methylate homocysteine. Remember, homocysteine can go multiple different directions. Homocysteine can be converted to methionine, it can be converted to glutathione, it can be converted into bile. So it's got a number of different pathways in which the body can get rid of it. So those pathways are largely B vitamin dependent. If you struggle with B vitamins, if you struggle taking them, then you might consider, if your homocysteine levels are really high and you're running a greater risk, you might consider IV nutrition. You can get with your doctor and ask them about IV nutrition or about sublingual. Some people tolerate, like for example, vitamin B12. Some people tolerate a sublingual B12 better than they do an oral B12. I actually have a product called hydroxycobalamin on gluten-free satiety, which is a mixture of B6, B12, and folate, which is sublingual. So a lot of people tend to tolerate that a lot better than they do an oral B vitamin. Some people, it nauseates them or creates problems when they take them. Okay. Let's see, let's keep scrolling down here. So somebody was asking about cysteine making their asthma symptoms worse. Is there anything other than quercetin that can help? Yeah, high doses of quercetin. So, you got to get upwards of, 3 to 4 grams of quercetin a day. If you're using one of my formulations called Ultra Q, one pill is 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram, but it's also infused with OPC and pomegranate, which increases the absorption and the bioavailability of quercetin 100-fold. So it's a much more effective way to take it. Additionally, you can add high doses of vitamin C to that combination. High doses of vitamin C, if you're an adult, 150 pounds or more, you can start at around 5 grams of vitamin C to see if that's going to be helpful without the side effects of the cysteine that it seemed to cause. Latoya wants to know what causes postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or POTS, oftentimes referred to as POTS disease. Latoya, I want to refer you back to a video because I did a special video on POTS syndrome. 2 things I'll mention: vitamin B12 deficiency has been linked to it, as has gluten sensitivity. But if you go back and watch the video I shot, it was a couple months ago on that particular topic, you get some really more in-depth information about that might be helpful for you. I love that. Marie chimes in on her migraines. Since going gluten-free, no more migraines and no more sinus infections. So somebody was asking a question about migraines earlier, and that's been my experience clinically as well. When people that suffer with migraines find out they're gluten sensitive and cut gluten out of their diet, tremendous benefit, and they don't need prophylactic supplements anymore. You don't even have to take the B12 or the magnesium or the other supplements that I mentioned. Just changing your diet can sometimes be enough. If you don't have a copy of No Grain, No Pain, that would be a great place to start. You can pick that up at Amazon or any major book retailer, but No Grain, No Pain, published by Simon & Schuster, it has a phase 1 and a phase 2 diet that you can follow that can help you navigate kind of how to change your diet around any form of autoimmune-based pain, including migraine headaches. Cheryl once says, my B12 is 465. I assume, Cheryl, that you're referring to your serum levels. Serum levels are not a good indicator for vitamin B12 status. I would say that, vitamin B12 has an upper range of around 1,100 to 1,200, depending on the lab test. And 465 is relatively low in the serum compared to what the range is, but it's still not a great indicator for your B12 status. You could do shots, you could do pills for vitamin B12 if your doctor recommended either one. Some people do shots. I don't like shots because I don't like breaking the skin. I don't like having people break their skin. Your skin's your immune barrier, and to inject yourself with something that might be just as effective if you took an oral supplement, it's just less of a risk factor involved with an oral supplementation than with a shot. Susie wants to know, are people with, I'm going to assume you mean inflammatory bowel disease, Susie. If you don't mean that, you might mean irritable bowel disease, but IBD. Are they more susceptible to COVID-19? Potentially, yes. If you have a history of inflammatory bowel disease, but you control it with good behavior, diet, and lifestyle, I don't really think you're at any greater risk than anyone else who's in good health. However, if you have an active inflammatory bowel disorder, then yeah, I think you probably are at an increased risk. And so, you know, again, take proper precautions in that regard. Let's see, what else we got here? Okay. Yeah, so I think we got most of the questions answered. Somebody else, Christine, is asking about a glaucoma protocol. If you've got somebody near and dear to you who's diagnosed and their vision is going on them, no protocol would I recommend. I'd recommend to get with a good functional doctor and really get a specific protocol that's unique to them. Otherwise, you spend hundreds of dollars a month on supplements and not see any benefit from it. And I'd rather that person take an intelligent action with guidance to be able to overcome or enhance or improve that scenario or outcome. Let's see, Kayla, when we had pneumonia, is it possible we had COVID? You know, it's possible. A lot of people, that's the whole thing, and I think that's what time is going to pan out with these new antibody tests. You got to remember that going back on COVID again, you know, the whole platform of COVID diagnosis is extremely flawed because the testing for it is flawed. The person that designed the actual test for COVID said, don't use this to diagnose COVID. It's not a diagnostic test. But the government, you know, and all the powers that be have sanctioned this test as a diagnostic tool. It's not what it was intended to do, and so it really wasn't intended to track this pandemic and give an accurate assessment, because you've got a high proclivity toward false positive and false negative with that test that's being used. And the same thing with antibody tests. The antibody tests that are being used, you can have a high proclivity toward a false positive as well. You know, so again, the statistical analysis around this is one of the reasons why it's so flawed, is because the testing for identifying what COVID actually is, or whether a person has it, or whether a person has immunity to it, is also, in a sense, somewhat flawed. You know, we've had the capacity to do testing in my office, but you know how many people have actually tested is zero, and there's several reasons why. One, I don't like to use tests that deliver a potential for a false premise, and two, I don't want government agencies using information against citizens of this country, against them, to unduly sequester them to their homes. Remember that a COVID swab is not a diagnostic for positive COVID. And so people, you know, getting this test result, again, there's also the psychosomatic impact here. If you get a test result that's positive, just like if you get a diagnosis of cancer, if you're told that you have a terminal disease, then you prepare your mind for the fact that you're going to die, and then you create your reality around that. And so same thing with COVID. People get a positive test, even if they maybe are asymptomatic and don't even have COVID, and then they get sick as a result of allowing their mind to believe that they can get sick because they have a disease based on what a test said, even though that test could have a high proclivity toward false negatives or false positives. So again, I'm not a big fan of the testing because I don't really think it serves anyone, because there's really no great treatment for COVID anyway other than bed rest. And if you want to be intelligent about it, in my opinion, you take care of your immune system through your behaviors. Now, again, if you're in a dire acute situation, you can seek out medical care. But again, look at what's happened in the hospitals, whether you had COVID or whether you didn't have COVID. There was a standard of care that was being delivered that was killing people. And that's another factor involved in this, is that the death rate for people going on respirators was upwards of 90+%. And was that because COVID was killing them, or was it because the respirator was the wrong selection for the treatment and the respirator was killing them because it was ineffective and damaged their lungs? So I think you know, part of getting that diagnosis, again, can lead doctors down the wrong path and can lead you down the wrong path. John wants to know, have I heard of a mutated strain? There are about 30 mutated strains of COVID-19 already that have been identified. And again, this is part of it, you know. The second wave, you keep hearing, you know, I call it psychological operations because I was in the military and I studied psychology, and so I understand how when you repeat a lie boldly enough, repetitively, how that lie can actually become people's truths, and when it becomes their truths, then their actions are based on what they perceive to be true, even though it may not be. And so what you hear with COVID-19 is the new norm. Get ready for the new norm. You hear the psychological terms, social distancing. Let's do this together. Let's stay home together. You know, so these are all kind of psychological terms that have been thrown out there to create a sense of camaraderie around slavery. That's my humble opinion about it. These terms, I look at and I don't agree with them. I think they're a method of attack against human free will for a virus that has a low mortality rate. Let's see here. Okay, I think we covered pretty much most of it. We're out of time anyway. Thanks for spending your Wednesday evening with me. We usually do the show on Monday for those of you who are new, so make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, so we can send you updates when we're going live on Monday evenings, every Monday at 6 p.m. minus holidays. And make sure if you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, we have the world's #1 largest newsletter for gluten sensitivity. You can come visit me at my foundation at glutenfreesociety.org. And sign up for that. It's free. We'll send you a bunch of really, really great resources on health and wellness and how to navigate the gluten-free lifestyle. So this is Dr. Osborne wishing you excellent health and sanity in this time of insanity. And we'll see you next Monday evening. Have a great night. Hey, if you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutenology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.